I used to think being the responsible one meant something, that if I just kept showing up, paid my way, sent birthday gifts, and laughed at the right times, I'd earn a seat at the table. Turns out all I got was a folding chair, and eventually not even that. The first real crack showed up during my parents' anniversary planning. 35 years of marriage, 2 daughters, a legacy to toast, I guess. You'd think that would involve both kids. But apparently one of us mattered more. Spoiler, it wasn't me. It started with a call that felt off even before I hit answer. I was standing in my kitchen, late March light drizzling through the windows, wrapping a gift I'd spent weeks organising. A hand-painted clock, our family name etched in gold. Sentimental, personal, elegant. I'd also ordered a custom card, one of those heavy stock gold foil ones that feel like they mean something. The plan was to surprise them. I had even cleared my schedule so I could fly in early, help set up, decorate the backyard, like we used to do when I was still someone they remembered. "Hey Mom," I greeted, forcing a note of cheer. She hesitated. "Oh, hi sweetheart." I smiled at the phone like it could soften the silence. I was thinking maybe I could fly in Thursday, help set up for the anniversary. I already got them a gift. Another pause. Then came Dad's voice, firm and familiar in the worst ways. "It's better if you don't come this year." Just like that. I blinked. Why not? "It's complicated," he said, which wasn't a reason so much as an excuse. "Callista's bringing someone important. We don't want too much going on." Someone important, right, not me, of course. I let out a breath I hadn't realised I was holding. Okay. They didn't try to explain further. They didn't ask about the gift. They didn't say they'd miss me. The line went dead, and I just stood there, hand resting on the ribbon-wrapped box, like it might unravel itself and explain what the hell just happened. But I already knew. This wasn't new, it was just the clearest it had ever been. Growing up, I was always the steady one. Callista was brighter. The kind of person who turned heads in every room and never had to clean up her own messes. When I got a promotion, they forgot to call. When she dated a guy with a trust fund. Suddenly we were throwing dinner parties. I used to tell myself it wasn't favoritism, just different relationships. But now, they'd cut me out of their lives for a man they barely knew. That was louder than any toast. Still a part of me clung to the old hope. Maybe they were just overwhelmed. Maybe it was nothing. I checked Instagram the night of the party. Just curiosity, just for a second. The first photo, a tented canopy glowing with string lights. Familiar faces gathered around my parents' backyard table. Callista in a champagne dress, radiant. And there, front and centre, was my clock, my gift. Smiling in her hands like it had always belonged to her. The caption, "So proud of Callista for organising everything. Couldn't ask for a better daughter." And that's when it hit me. It wasn't just that they didn't want me there. They wanted her to be me. They were rewriting the story, cropping me out like a photo they didn't want to retake. I could have screamed, I could have called and demanded answers, but instead I closed the app, placed the phone face down and stared at the quiet gift box still sitting beside me. Let them have their version of the story, because the truth was still waiting to walk through the door. They just didn't know it yet. See, while they were busy praising Callista's boyfriend Dorian, they didn't realise the man they were fawning over had just started a new job at Pacific Terrich. And they definitely didn't realise that his boss, the one signing his paychecks, leading his team and running the company, was the same daughter they'd just disinvited. Me, Celine Carroll, not just their forgotten child, but the woman they were about to wish they'd never pushed away. The days after the anniversary party blurred together in a mix of silence and passive-aggressive text messages. "Hope everything's going well at work. We missed you at the party. Callista did a great job. Let's talk soon, okay?" Every message from my mother felt like a gaslight wrapped in a heart emoji. I didn't respond. Instead, I threw myself into work. Pacific Terrich was finalising a major renewable energy deal with the city, and I had meetings stacked from morning till night. But between the strategy calls and site reviews, I'd catch myself drifting back to that stupid gold-etched clock sitting in someone else's hands. It was a Tuesday when Callista called. I stared at the screen for 3 rings before answering. Curiosity, masochism. Maybe both. "Hey, Celine," she chirped, bright as ever. "How's everything?" "Busy," I said flatly. "Oh, totally, same. I was actually calling because Mom said you've been distant lately. She's kind of worried." "Right, distant." "I've been working," I said, "like always." She let out a nervous laugh. "Well, yeah, you've always been like super into your job, but it's been weird without you around. We're thinking of doing a little family dinner this weekend, just to catch up." "Is Dorian coming?" I asked. A beat of silence. Yeah, he's basically part of the family now. You two haven't officially met, right?" "Oh, we'd met. He just didn't know it yet." "Sure," I said, surprising even myself. "I'll come." The dinner was at my parents' house, same table, same walls, same cold smiles. I showed up in a black blazer, hair pulled back tight, makeup minimal but sharp. The kind of look that says you may not want me here, but you'll feel my presence anyway. Callista opened the door, all fake surprise and tighter than necessary hugs. "You look amazing," she said, her eyes flicking down to my shoes. "Is that Valentino?" "Custom," I replied. "Company gift after the second expansion." "Oh, how cool." Her smile twitched. Inside, Dorian stood near the window, holding a glass of wine and chatting with my father like they'd known each other for decades. "Celine Wright," he said brightly when Callista introduced us. "I've heard so much about you." I smiled, likewise. My parents stood awkwardly near the kitchen island. Mum gave me a one-armed hug like she wasn't sure she was allowed to. Dad just nodded. Dinner was a minefield. Every conversation veered toward Callista, her new skincare routine, her weekend yoga retreats, the way she balanced her career and relationship. Meanwhile, I passed the potatoes in silence and counted every time someone said, "We're just so proud of her." At one point, Dorian mentioned work. "My boss is great tough, but she really knows her stuff. Honestly, she's the kind of person who makes you want to do better." I looked up, our eyes met, and in that second, I knew he hadn't put it together yet. Later, when dessert hit the table and Dad clinked his glass, I knew a speech was coming. "We just want to say how grateful we are for family," he began, "especially those who show up." That one landed squarely in my chest. And Dorian, Mom added, beaming, "It's so wonderful having you here. You're exactly the kind of man we hoped Callista would end up with." "Successful," Dad added, "driven, good values." They might as well have slapped me across the face. Callista leaned into Dorian, who smiled back, oblivious to the storm brewing beside him. I stayed quiet, but something shifted in me. They weren't just erasing me anymore, they were replacing me. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, replaying every word, every smile, every "we're so proud." I thought of the years I spent covering bills when Dad was between contracts, the time I postponed a vacation to help Mom after her surgery, the times I showed up over and over hoping they'd finally see me. And then I thought of Callista floating through life on Instagram filters and family favoritism, now being praised for bringing a man into the family like it was some kind of crown. A man who reported to me. That irony didn't feel funny anymore. It felt infuriating. The next day, Dorian popped into my office. "Hey, just wanted to say thanks again for the leadership training sessions last week. Seriously, everyone's learning a lot from you." I nodded, glad to hear. He shifted awkwardly. "Also, Callista mentioned something about your family dinner last night. Said it was kind of tense." I raised an eyebrow. "She did, huh?" He winced. "Sorry, didn't mean to overstep. Just, she said you two don't always see eye to eye." That was an understatement. I considered brushing it off, but something about his tone made me pause. I leaned forward. "Dorian, has Callista ever told you what I do here?" He blinked. "She said you're in management. I figured VP level or something. Everyone listens when you talk." I smiled. "I'm the co-founder." His eyes widened. "Wait, you—" I nodded. "Pacific Terech is my company. I built it. From scratch." He stared, jaw slightly slack. "I'm not saying this to flex," I continued, "but you should know that before you believe everything you hear over Sunday dinners." Dorian nodded slowly, the puzzle pieces snapping into place behind his eyes. Wow, Callista never mentioned that. Of course she didn't. I waved it off. "It's fine. I prefer staying behind the scenes anyway." But it wasn't fine, not really. The following weekend I got a call from Mom. "Sweetheart," she said, using that breathy voice she reserved for guilt and manipulation, "we've been talking and, well, we think it would be good for everyone if you mentored Dorian a little more closely. He really respects you." There it was. The real reason for the sudden family dinner. The flurry of polite texts, the awkward invite. I wasn't family, I was a tool. And they'd finally remembered I existed because I had something they wanted. I stared at the ceiling as her voice rambled in my ear. "You've always been so talented with leadership. Maybe just take him under your wing a little, help him navigate the company." I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "Sure, Mum." Because now I understood something they never wanted me to know: I didn't need them. But they definitely needed me. It happened on a Wednesday. Mid-quarter reviews had wrapped, I had 3 investor calls under my belt, and I was finally heading home when my phone lit up with a notification from my bank. Transfer alert, $12,000 withdrawn. I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. Cold air bit at my cheeks, but I barely felt it. Another notification buzzed in. 4,800 auto payment cleared, Callista Peterson. My stomach dropped. I logged in immediately. Pages of transactions flicked past my screen, all of them recent, all of them unauthorized. Designer boutiques, a wellness retreat in Sedona, a deposit to a luxury event venue. That's when it clicked they weren't just using me. They were funding Callista's engagement party with my money. I froze on the last transaction. Event rental deposit, the Glass House, $9,000. The same venue I had once looked at for my future wedding. I couldn't breathe. 20 minutes later, I stood in my apartment coat, still on keys, clutched in my fist like a weapon. I called the bank. They confirmed the charges were made using a shared emergency account, one I'd set up years ago just in case my parents ever needed help with a medical bill or house repairs. Turns out Mom had never removed Callista's access. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. 10 minutes after that, I was driving across town, not caring that it was past dinner or that I hadn't called first. They didn't get that courtesy anymore. I marched straight to the front door of my parents' house and knocked. Hard. When Mom opened the door, she blinked like she'd seen a ghost. "Celine, honey?" "Where is she?" I asked, voice low. "Where's Callista?" She faltered. "What's this about?" I pushed past her. "Don't play dumb." Callista was in the living room, curled up with Dorian, scrolling through her phone. When she looked up and saw me, her smile vanished. "Oh," she said, "you found out." That was it. No apology, no embarrassment, just you found out. "You used my money," I said, walking in slowly, "without asking, for your party." Callista stood, arms folded. "It's not like you needed it. And Mum said you probably wouldn't even notice." When I turned to Mom, who was hovering behind me, now wringing her hands. "I just meant you're always so busy," she stammered. "And you've done so well for yourself, sweetheart." "I earned that money," I snapped. "And you let her take it like it was spare change." Dorian stood now too caught between all 3 of us, looking horrified. "You lied to him," I said, turning to Callista. "You lied to everyone, about me, about who I am. You wanted my story without the work it took to live it." Callista's face twisted. "You're being dramatic." "I'm being done." I pulled the manila envelope out of my Coke Bank statements, receipts, login records, and dropped it on the coffee table. "Effective immediately," I said. "The account is frozen. All funds are pulled. Any auto transfers cancelled. And you," I looked at Callista, "will repay every cent you stole." Her mouth opened, but I didn't give her time. "And don't you dare try to spin this," I added. "You don't get to play the victim in a story you wrote with a stolen pen." Silence thickened around us. Dad appeared in the hallway, looking grim. "Let's just calm down," he said, but I was already done being calm. "You cut me out, rewrote me as a footnote. Now you don't get to ask for my ink." I turned for the door. "Celine, wait," Dorian called. "Is all of that true?" I didn't even stop. "Ask your boss," I said. "She'll tell you everything." Not anymore. The silence didn't last long. By the time I got home, I had 6 missed calls, 3 from my mother, 2 from Callista, and 1 from a number I didn't recognize, probably Dorian confused, and suddenly piecing the puzzle together. I didn't answer. Instead, I poured a glass of wine, sat on my balcony, and stared out at the Tacoma skyline while the cold pressed in around me. For the first time in weeks, I felt warm. The next morning, the group chat lit up. The family one, the carols that I hadn't muted yet. "Mum, this is going too far, Celine. Please call me." "Dad, we understand you're upset, but that was totally inappropriate." Callista, wow. "So you're really doing this?" No one apologised. No one asked how I felt. Just a chorus of "how could you embarrass us like that?" I left the messages unread. But the real confrontation came the following weekend. They showed up at my building. I saw them from my office window, Mum in her beige trench coat, Dad with his hands shoved deep in his pockets, Callista pacing like she'd rather be anywhere else. I thought about ignoring the doorbell. I even let it ring twice. But something in me, it wasn't anger exactly, wanted to face them now, not for closure, just for clarity. When I opened the door, the three of them stood in the hallway like some bad sitcom intervention. I didn't invite them in. "We need to talk," Dad said, already irritated. "I think we've said enough." Callista rolled her eyes. "So what, you're just cutting us off?" "You stole from me," I said. "You lied about me, then tried to use me. What exactly do you think you're entitled to now?" Mum stepped forward, hands clasped together in that faux peacekeeper way. "Selene, we were trying to do something special for Callista's engagement." "With my money?" Her eyes darted away. "It was a mistake." "No, a mistake is forgetting a birthday. This was theft and manipulation." Dad's jaw tightened. "You've changed, Selene." "No," I replied, voice steady. "I just stopped pretending this family sees me." The hallway buzzed with a silence so sharp it felt like a scream. Even Callista, who always had something smug to say, said nothing. Finally she muttered, "You always think you're better than us." That made me laugh. "No, I just finally realised I don't need to shrink to keep you comfortable." Mum blinked hard but didn't cry. She always saved her tears for audiences that didn't know better. Dad looked like he wanted to yell, or maybe reason, but in the end he said what I think he truly meant. "You'll regret this." And with that they turned, walked away, no hugs, no goodbyes. Just the soft echo of shoes down a hallway that had only ever echoed with their absence anyway. For days after, the apartment felt too still, like the air had to relearn how to breathe without the weight of expectations pressing into it. There were moments when it stung, like when I passed the framed childhood photo of us at the lake, all fake smiles and wet clothes, Callista clinging to Dad's arm, while I stood in the background. Even then I'd known. But more often what I felt was something new, relief. No more pretending, no more curated texts or birthday gifts that went unopened, no more being someone's silent foundation. I took long walks alone, ate what I wanted without worrying about what Mum would call unladylike. I planned a vacation to Portugal, booked a solo Airbnb with a rooftop and ocean view. For the first time in years, I wasn't organising my life around what my family needed. Around week 2, Dorian emailed me. Subject, "I'm sorry." He didn't ask for anything, just said he was stunned. That Callista had told him I worked in admin, that he'd had no idea the woman he looked up to was the one his girlfriend's family had tried to erase. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry at him, he seemed like a decent guy caught in a toxic play, but because some things didn't need closure, they just needed distance. I started therapy again, not the fix me kind, but the remind me who I am kind. My therapist said something that stuck with me. Maybe it's not about being cut off. Maybe it's about being finally set free. I think she's right. I pulled out the wedding venue brochure Callista had charged to my account. The glass house, beautiful space, expensive. The kind of place you only book when you want to be envied more than loved. I thought about how many events I'd imagined hosting there. Not a wedding necessarily, just something that felt mine. Then I tossed the brochure in the trash, because it didn't matter anymore. The next week I hosted a dinner at my place. Just friends. People who saw me, laughed with me, knew the version of me that didn't come with conditions. We ate takeout off mismatched plates, and someone brought brownies in a Tupperware that looked like it dated back to the 90s. It was perfect. I raised a glass somewhere between dessert and bad karaoke. To chosen families, I said, and to not apologising for taking up space. And for the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider at my own table. Spring came late that year, like it wasn't sure it was welcome. But when it arrived, it hit all at once, sun warming the sidewalks, cherry blossoms bursting across every corner of Tacoma like the city had forgiven itself. And I think maybe so had I. By then, the distance between me and my family had solidified into silence, not the uncomfortable kind, but the kind that made room for new things, real things, mine. I didn't throw a grand party to celebrate cutting ties or stage some symbolic bonfire of old photo albums. I just lived, slowly, intentionally. I spent weekends reading on my balcony, went on solo hikes, and added fresh herbs to the windowsill like some kind of domestic rebellion. For the first time in my life, there was no one to perform for. No one I needed to impress or outshine. I wasn't chasing love anymore. I was standing in it my own. Professionally, things soared. Pacific Terich signed its biggest contract yet, and I was invited to speak at a leadership conference in DC. One of the panelists introduced me as the quiet force behind clean energy's most disruptive startup. I smiled and let the words land. Not as validation, as acknowledgement. The difference mattered. I planned a small getaway after the event, a weekend at a lakeside cabin with a few close friends. Just wine music and long, uninterrupted conversations. No posing for approval, no gold-etched clocks, no one thanked me for. And somewhere between sips of Pinot and barefoot dancing on the deck, I felt something settle inside me. A kind of peace I'd spent years searching for in people who never knew how to offer it. That's when I understood the real lesson. You don't owe anyone the version of yourself that keeps you small, especially not the ones who only loved you when you stayed quiet. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about forgiveness. It was about reclamation of time, of self-worth, of space at the table I had built with my own hands. A few months later, I heard from Dorian again, a brief email. He and Callista had taken some time apart. He didn't say much more, just that he admired me and that the truth, my truth, had changed a lot for him. I didn't respond, not because I was angry, just because I'd already moved forward. Mom sent a letter in the fall. No envelope, no return address, just a plain note tucked inside a card with a watercolour of a house on the front. We didn't realise what we were doing. We see it now. I hope someday you can see us differently too. Love, Mom. I read it once, then again, then tucked it into a drawer I never opened twice. Maybe one day I'll reply, maybe not. Because closure isn't always a conversation. Sometimes it's just choosing not to bleed from the same wound twice. Now on quiet mornings I water the herbs in my kitchen, flip through cookbooks I never had time for, and play old records that remind me of who I was before I ever thought being loved meant being less. And I smile. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. Because this life, this whole quiet-rooted life, is mine. And I finally believe I'm allowed to keep it. Story 2. I never expected to feel pure joy just from unlocking a door, but there I was, 29 years old, holding the keys to my very own apartment. It wasn't luck, it was the result of 6 years of disciplined saving, working overtime, skipping vacations, and living well below my means. And yes, a little help from my grandmother's will. My name's Rachel. I work in corporate finance, and 2 years ago I got promoted to a senior analyst role with a big salary bump. That, combined with the $150,000 inheritance I received after my grandmother passed, allowed me to buy a modest 2-bedroom apartment near downtown. I paid for it in full, no mortgage, no co-signer, just me, the title deed, and a lifetime of lessons in self-reliance. I posted a few photos on Instagram, nothing over the top. Just one of me standing in the sun-drenched living room, coffee in hand, captioned, "Built this myself." Friends flooded my DMs with congratulations. It felt validating. That is until my father called. "Come over Saturday," he said flatly. "We need to talk." That tone, cold, clipped. I hadn't heard from him in months. Not since Christmas, which I spent at my cousin's house because I wasn't invited to his. For context, my mother died when I was 10. Within a year, my dad married Elaine, and not long after they had my half-sister Madison. From the moment she could walk, she became the centre of their world. I became a shadow. Growing up, it was always Rachel, be quiet, or don't upset Madison. I was expected to blend into the background. Elaine didn't like me much, and Madison followed suit. Any success I had, grades, internships, promotions barely registered. The only person who truly saw me was my grandmother, my mum's mother. She opened her home, her heart, and eventually her savings to me. Without her, I wouldn't have made it through college or survived the early years of my career. So when my dad summoned me like a subordinate, I wasn't eager, but curiosity got the better of me. That Saturday, I arrived at their suburban home, neutral territory that had never really felt like mine. Dad was waiting in the living room, Elaine perched next to him like royalty. Madison, now 19, barely looked up from her phone. We wanted to discuss something important, Dad began. Madison just got into university. She'll be attending Lakeside College. Okay, I said, slowly waiting. She needs a place to live, Elaine added. Then came the pitch. My apartment, the one I'd saved for bought and furnished, was apparently ideal for Madison. They wanted me to give it to her, not rent it, not share it, give it. I laughed at first. I thought it was a joke. It's just sitting there, Elaine said, tone dismissive. You don't even have a roommate. Isn't it selfish to keep so much space to yourself? Madison's just starting out, Dad chimed in. She deserves a real chance. And I didn't, I said quietly. Elaine rolled her eyes. Rachel, don't be dramatic. That was the moment something in me cracked. Years of being overlooked. Years of swallowing resentment. Years of being treated like the optional daughter. I bought that apartment, I said, standing, with my own money. I'm not giving it to anyone. Dad's face darkened. Your grandmother's money. My grandmother, I snapped, who wasn't even your mother, who helped me when you wouldn't. Madison finally looked up, then pouting. You're such a selfish bitch. Elaine gasped. Dad just stared at me like I was the problem. You've always been jealous of Madison, Elaine hissed. She's everything you're not. You're right, I said. She gets handed everything. I had to earn it. Then I walked out. They tried calling, multiple times. Texts poured in. Dad told me I was disowned unless I reconsidered. Elaine accused me of dishonouring the family. Madison posted passive-aggressive stories on Instagram. I didn't respond. But I wasn't done yet either. A week after the blow-up at my dad's house, I threw a housewarming party. Nothing huge, just a few friends, co-workers, and my cousins, people who'd been there for me, without asking anything in return. It felt good to laugh in my own space, to pass around drinks in a home I built with my own 2 hands. No guilt, no lectures, just real people, real warmth. That night, while we were cleaning up the kitchen, my cousin Nate pulled me aside. Hey, I need to show you something, he said quietly. We stepped into the hallway. He handed me his phone. Saw this at Juno's last night. The screen showed a dim photo taken at a booth in a local restaurant. My stepmom Elaine sat across from a man I didn't recognise. They were holding hands. In the next picture they were kissing. And not the polite, oops, we're old friends kind of kiss, no. This was intimate. My stomach dropped. She was all over him, Nate added. Didn't even try to hide it. I stared at the pictures, stunned. Elaine had been married to my father for over 18 years. This wasn't some fling. This was practiced familiar, comfortable. The way they leaned into each other, laughed over dessert, it looked like 2 people who had been doing this for years. I sent the photos to myself. The next day I started digging. Elaine wasn't subtle. A quick look at her Facebook friends list turned up the guy Robert Mitchell. Worked at the same insurance company as Elaine for the last 2 decades. His profile had photos going back years, company barbecues, holiday parties, birthdays. And there she was, sometimes just in the background, sometimes with her hand on his shoulder. But one photo stopped me cold. It was from 2007. Elaine in a red dress sitting next to Robert in a park. His caption read, "Perfect Sunday with my favourite person." She was married to my dad at that point, and Madison, she would have been a baby. That's when the other shoe dropped. I pulled up a photo of Robert next to a recent one of Madison on my phone. The resemblance was striking. Same nose, same sharp chin, same light brown eyes. It hit me like a truck. Madison wasn't my dad's biological daughter. It explained so much. I didn't sleep that night, just sat there scrolling through pictures, lining up timelines, replaying everything. I felt sick, betrayed, angry, exhausted. My dad had turned on me over a lie he didn't even know he was living. I knew I couldn't just accuse them. I needed proof, real proof. So I got it. I scheduled a private paternity test. I collected a few hairs from Madison's old hairbrush that was still in their guest room, the same one that used to be mine. And some from my dad's comb when I visited under the excuse of talking things out. I paid for expedited results. 10 days later, I had the envelope in my hands. It was official. The test ruled my father out with 0% probability. Madison was not his daughter. That same evening, I got another call from my dad. "You're being childish," he snapped. "I won't let you ruin this family over a damn apartment." I took a breath. I'd planned this moment. "Let's talk in person," I said. "Saturday night, just us. I'll bring dinner." He agreed, still under the impression that he had the upper hand. Saturday came. I walked into their house, calm, composed, holding the test results in my purse. Elaine was there too, of course, pretending she hadn't tried to bully me out of my home just a week earlier. "You ready to be part of this family again?" she asked, all fake sweetness. I smiled. "I think it's time we all stop pretending," I said, pulling out the envelope and sliding it across the table to my dad. "What's this?" he frowned. "Just something you should have known a long time ago." He opened it. His eyes scanned the lines and the colour drained from his face. Elaine sat frozen, watching him read. The silence stretched. Then my dad looked up. "Is this a joke?" Elaine stood suddenly. "It's fake. She's trying to drive a wedge between us." I pulled out my phone and opened a folder of photos, Elaine and Robert, all those cosy dinners, the way she looked at him. "Stop," I said, my voice calm but sharp. "You don't get to lie anymore." I did the work. I followed the timeline. Madison isn't his, and you've known it. My father didn't speak, just stared at the envelope like it had opened a trapdoor beneath him. Elaine's mask finally cracked. "David, please. It was a mistake. It happened once." "No," I interrupted. "It didn't. This has been going on for years, and you let it. You built your perfect little family on a lie and tried to throw me out for it." I stood. "I'm not giving away my home. I'm not giving away anything anymore. You wanted to write me out of your life. Go ahead. But at least now you know who really doesn't belong here." Then I walked out, left them in that same living room where they tried to humiliate me. They wanted a reaction. They got the truth instead. After I walked out that night, I didn't hear from my father for 2 weeks. I wasn't surprised. The man who once threatened to disown me over an apartment now had to face the fact that the daughter he favoured all his life wasn't even his. The house of cards had collapsed, and he was buried beneath it. I didn't gloat. I didn't share the truth with the world. I didn't need to. The weight I'd carried for years trying to earn space in a family that treated me like a guest in my own story was gone, and in its place relief, stillness. The first few mornings were quiet in a new kind of way. No buzzing phone, no backhanded texts, no pretending. I started walking more. Long walks around my neighbourhood at sunset. Just me, the trees, and the soft hum of people living their lives. I'd bring my coffee outside and sit on the balcony watching the sky shift colours over the city I'd claimed as home. My apartment felt different too. Not because anything had changed inside, but because I stopped seeing it as something I had to defend. It wasn't just a place anymore. It was a boundary, one I had finally drawn. A few weeks later, I hosted a quiet dinner. Just a handful of people, my cousins, a friend from work, the manager who once vouched for me, when I almost didn't get that promotion. We ate, laughed, passed around stories that didn't carry pain. When the plates were cleared and the wine ran out, my cousin Emma pulled me aside. "You're glowing," she said, smiling. "You look calm." I nodded. "I think it's the first time I've had real peace in years." And it was true. Not the kind of peace that comes from getting what you want, but the kind that comes from finally letting go of what you don't need. Eventually, my dad did reach out. He called once, I let it ring. Then he sent a letter, handwritten 3 pages, apologies, regrets, words like mistake blinded, should have seen you. He admitted what I already knew, that he chose comfort over truth. That he let Elaine's story shape how he saw me. That he thought favouring Madison was easier than facing what he lost after my mum died. I don't expect forgiveness, he wrote. I just want you to know I see you now. I read it twice. Then I folded it carefully and tucked it away in a drawer. Maybe one day I'll answer, maybe not. Not because I'm angry, but because healing doesn't always come with a reunion. Sometimes it's just the quiet decision to live well, to live free. Now I wake up in a home I earned. Not just the apartment, but the life around it, the job I built, the friends I trust, the quiet I chose. And when I think about everything I went through, being dismissed, erased, manipulated, I realize this. You can't force people to see your worth, but you can stop shrinking just to fit inside their blindness. I'm not the daughter they wanted, but I became the woman I needed. And that's enough. Story 3. My name's Danielle Lewis, and I'm 34 years old. I've spent over a decade building a successful career in financial analysis. No shortcuts, no inheritance, no family favours, just grit, long nights and discipline. I was the first in my family to finish college. I paid for it myself, 2 part-time job scholarships and student loans. I started from the bottom in a small accounting firm, worked my way up, and now I'm a senior analyst for a clean energy company in Portland. For the last 6 years, I've also been the unofficial financial safety net for my parents and younger sister Nicole. I paid off medical bills for Mom when her insurance didn't cover all the treatments. I've covered Nicole's car payments when she couldn't afford it, chipped in for family vacations, and most significantly, paid the property taxes every year on my parents' lakeside vacation home in Washington. It wasn't small change either. The taxes ran around $9,000 a year, and I'd been paying them since my late 20s without question. I never really thought twice about it. It was just what I did as the responsible daughter. I didn't come from money. But when I started doing well, I wanted to give back. Until recently. A few weeks ago, I visited my parents' vacation home for what I thought would be a casual Sunday dinner. Instead, I walked into a financial ambush. Dad opened the conversation by sliding a bill across the table. "Taxes are due again," he said like he was passing the salt. No greeting, no asking how I was, just an invoice and an assumption. I picked it up and froze. "That's nearly $10,000, I said. "You've always taken care of it," he replied like that was the end of the discussion. I looked around the room. Mom was sitting silently on the couch, eyes down. Nicole, 28, was scrolling on her phone, barely engaged. "Dad," I said, trying to stay calm, "I've been covering this and a lot more for years. The roof repair last spring. That was me. Nicole's car. Me. Half of the vacation last year. Me. I've never asked for anything back, but it's getting to a point where I can't keep carrying this." "You make plenty," he said, tone flat. "Nicole's trying to start a business. She needs help more than you do." And that's when I noticed the envelope on the table, legal stationery, partially hidden under a magazine, but I saw the bold type, Lewis Family Trust, Nicole Lewis. I reached for it. "Danielle, that's private," Dad snapped. But it was too late. I opened it. It was a trust fund for Nicole, just Nicole. A 6-figure account, $400,000 already funded. Set up by my parents, my dad specifically. I sat there stunned. I'd asked for help during college and was told there was no money. When my old car broke down 2 years into my job, I covered it with a high-interest loan. When I moved into my first apartment, I scrambled to gather a deposit and furniture. My parents had said over and over that they wished they could help. But the money had been there, just not for me. "When were you going to tell me?" I asked quietly. Dad looked away. "Nicole's the one who needs support. You've always been independent." That hit harder than it should have. Apparently my success meant I didn't deserve help, while Nicole's consistent neediness was a reason to reward her. All those years, I said slowly, I asked for help. And you let me struggle while setting her up with a trust fund. You don't need it, Mom finally said, still not looking at me. You've done fine on your own. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Nicole had gone to private school paid for. She got a brand new car at 16. They paid for her tuition in full. And now she had a business idea, which from what I could tell was mostly Instagram and ordering drop-shipped makeup. And she was being handed a financial cushion to fall back on. I'm not paying this anymore, I said, pushing the bill back. You're being selfish, Dad barked. This family's always supported each other. No, I said calmly. This family supported Nicole. I just footed the bill. I stood up, grabbed my keys and walked out. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table and opened a spreadsheet I'd kept for years, mostly for budgeting. But one tab had always been labelled family expenses. Out of curiosity or maybe instinct, I started adding it up. Property taxes 6 years at $9,000 a year on $54,000. Roof repair $11,200. Mom's medical bills $8,700. Nicole's car payments 3 years $18,000. Vacations $3,000 a year for 5 years $15,000. Miscellaneous flights, emergencies, etc. $7,400. Total $114,300. I stared at that number for a long time. The next day, I met with my financial advisor, Jason. We'd worked together for years and I trusted him. I brought the spreadsheet. This is a lot, Danielle, he said after reviewing it. This kind of informal giving is generous, but it's also draining you. He recommended I document everything properly, track it, and maybe even speak with a forensic accountant to calculate the long-term financial loss, because some of that money could have gone into my investment portfolio and grown. That afternoon, I met with a specialist named Eric. We spent 2 hours going through records, receipts, and bank transfers. By the time we were done, he handed me a preliminary report. Adjusted for investment losses, he said you've given up closer to $135,000. I left his office feeling sick. Not just because of the number, but because I had let it happen for so long. And just like that, I was done. After I left the accountant's office, I went home and sat with the report in silence. It was strange reading my own life reduced to a list of dollar signs. But in that silence, something settled in me. Not rage, not grief, just finality. I wasn't going to keep paying the price for being the responsible one. That night, I logged into every account where I was still connected to my family's finances. I cancelled the automatic payments for Nicole's car. I removed myself from the property tax portal for the lake house. I deleted myself as an authorised payer on my parents' utilities and insurance, all of it. Then I opened a new investment fund, labelled it simply DL Future. I moved $100,000 into it, what I could recover. The rest I considered it tuition in a lesson I finally learned. The next day it began. 10:42 a.m, text from Nicole. Hey, my car payment bounced. Can you fix that? I'm slammed prepping inventory for my new line. 11:08 a.m, text from Dad. Need to confirm tax payment went through. You said you'd take care of it. No please, no thank you, not even hi. I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to be petty, because I was done explaining. 3:15 p.m, voicemail from Mum. Sweetheart, your dad is really stressed. The property taxes are overdue and we got a notice with late fees. Nicole's upset too. We don't know what's going on, but we're worried. Please call. Worried. Not about me, about the money not coming in. The thing is, I wasn't going to leave them in the dark forever. I just wanted space to handle things on my terms. 2 days later, I had my chance. Mom called again. I answered. Danielle, we need to talk about the taxes, she said right away. I know, I said. I've decided I'm not covering them anymore. Silence. You're not, she said, like it had never even crossed her mind that I'd stop. I've already paid over $100,000 toward family expenses, Mum, I said. While you and Dad were setting up a trust fund for Nicole. She didn't deny it. That told me everything. You're doing well, Danielle, she said. Nicole's still figuring things out. I was figuring things out when I was eating canned soup and taking night shifts during college, I said. No one bailed me out. More silence. I'm not angry, I said finally, but I'm done being the backup plan. She sighed. Your father won't understand. I'm not doing it for him to understand, I said. I'm doing it because I finally understand. We hung up shortly after, polite, cool, like strangers who used to be close. The next morning, security at my apartment called. Miss Lewis, the front desk guy, said, "Your father is here. He's asking to come up." I stared at the phone. "Tell him I'm not available." He says he won't leave. "Then call the building manager," I said, "or the police if it comes to that." He was gone within the hour, left no message. That afternoon my cousin Ethan texted, "Your dad's been talking, says you're cutting the family off, asking Uncle Roy for a loan." "Really?" I replied. "He says you're hoarding money while Nicole's business is on the edge, that you turned cold, ruthless." "Funny," I texted back. "Did he mention the 6-figure trust he set up for her?" Ethan didn't reply right away. When he did, it was just, "Wait, what?" Exactly. Later that week, my mum called again. "Please come to dinner," she said. "We need to clear the air." I agreed. I knew they'd try something. I was ready. Saturday evening, I walked into my parents' house and found the whole setup dad standing by the fireplace like he was about to give a speech. Nicole seated beside him, Mom next to her, like they were preparing a stage. "You've changed," Dad said first thing. "I have," I agreed. "And I like the change. We just want to talk," Mom added, "as a family." So I opened my bag, pulled out 2 manila folders and placed them on the coffee table. "This is 5 years of receipts, transfers and invoices," I said. "Everything I've paid for. Total comes to $135,000, including investment loss." Dad stared. Nicole blinked. "You kept records," he said, like that was the shocking part. "I'm a financial analyst," I replied. "You make more than us," Nicole said quietly. "You could afford it." I turned to her. "Nicole, this isn't about money. It's about how everyone expected me to give and give while no one gave back. Not even honesty." Her face flushed, but she didn't speak. "I know about the trust fund," I added. Dad's jaw clenched. "You were never meant to see that." "Exactly," I said. "You didn't want me to see it because you knew it would make everything look different." "You don't understand what Nicole needs," he snapped. "No," I said, "you don't understand what I gave up." And then I stood. "I'm not asking for repayment. I'm not angry. But I'm not your safety net anymore. I'm not your fallback. I'm just your daughter. And if that's not enough, then we don't have much to talk about." I walked out. Not because I wanted to end it there, but because I had finally started something boundaries. After that dinner, I expected some backlash. Instead, I got silence. No angry texts, no voicemails, not even one of Nicole's usual passive-aggressive guilt trips. For the first time in years, I wasn't part of the family's financial ecosystem, and the quiet that followed felt clean. A few days later, I got a message from my cousin Ethan again. "Hey, just so you know, your dad's been talking to Uncle Roy and Aunt Sheila, trying to get a loan to cover the taxes on the lake house." "Let me guess," I replied. "He left out the part about Nicole's trust fund." He did. I mentioned it. Everyone was stunned. I didn't ask Ethan to defend me, but I appreciated it. Because for the first time, someone else in the family saw the full picture and said something. I went on with my life. Work was good. My portfolio was stronger than it had been in months. I had breathing room both financially and mentally. I started planning a trip to Alaska, something I'd been putting off for years, because there's always something else to take care of. That something else had always been family. But now I was finally taking care of me. Then 1 week later, Nicole showed up at my apartment. She didn't text first, just rang the doorbell. I looked through the peephole. She was standing there in jeans and a hoodie, not the usual designer get-up. I opened the door halfway. "Can we talk?" she asked. I let her in. She sat on the edge of my couch like she wasn't sure she belonged there. And for once, she didn't lead with a complaint or a demand. "I didn't know the trust fund was that much," she said quietly. "I thought it was maybe 20 grand, emergency stuff." "It's over 400,000, I said, and Dad kept adding to it." She nodded slowly. "He told me last night, after everything." There was a pause. "I never realized how much you'd been paying for. I thought you just had money." "That's the story they told you," I said gently. "But money doesn't just appear. I worked for it. I sacrificed for it. And I shared it because I thought it was helping, but they never told me the truth." Nicole looked at her hands. "I don't know how to fix this." You don't need to fix it, I said. Just be honest. Going forward, be different. She hesitated. I talked to Dad. Told him I don't want the trust if it's going to keep causing damage. I asked him to split it between us. That caught me off guard. You did? She nodded. He said no at first. Got all defensive. But when I told him I'd rather lose the money than lose my sister, he finally listened. I didn't know what to say. That was more than I expected from Nicole. Whether he follows through, I don't know, she added. But I wanted you to hear it from me. Thanks, I said, and I meant it. She stood to leave, then turned back. You're right about one thing, she said. You were always the responsible one. But that doesn't mean you should have been carrying all of us. Then she left. A few days later, I got a formal letter from my parents' financial advisor. The trust was being restructured, split equally between me and Nicole. A clean 50-50. Attached was a note from the advisor. Per Mr. and Mrs. Lewis's instruction, the adjustments have been made. You now have equal access and oversight to the trust. No apology, no personal note, just action, and maybe that's all I needed. That same week, another letter arrived, this one from my dad. Handwritten, Danielle. You've made your point, loud and clear. And while I don't like how it all unfolded, I can't ignore the truth. You've carried more than your share, more than we ever asked Nicole to carry. That's on me. I don't expect things to go back to how they were, but I hope one day we can start over with honesty this time. Dad, I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to crumple it. Another part wanted to believe him. In the end, I just folded the letter and tucked it away. Because forgiveness doesn't happen all at once. It happens in the quiet choices you make after the storm has passed. That summer I went to Alaska, hiked the trails, breathed mountain air, watched bald eagles dive over the ocean. No emails, no invoices, no expectations. Just me and peace. When I came home, I bought a small cabin 2 hours outside Portland. Not to prove anything. Not to build a legacy. Just a space of my own. And this time the name on the title was mine. Only mine. Not because I didn't believe in helping family, but because I finally learned this. You can give everything and still be seen as replaceable. But when you choose yourself without guilt, that's when you finally reclaim your worth. So if you're reading this and wondering whether it's okay to stop sacrificing for people who only see you as a resource, let me say it clearly. Yes. Yes, it's okay. You're not selfish. You're not cold. You're choosing balance. And sometimes walking away is the only way to come home to yourself.